Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and welcome to my monthly journal pages. Today we'll be flipping through my August pages and chatting about the journal spreads, techniques, and ephemera I created to connect with my personal tarot practice last month. So my journal for August was a little less filled out than it normally would be, and that's mostly due to the fact that we were on vacation for some of August. So I'll actually show you at the end what my journaling looks like when I'm out of town and I don't have this. So of course I create all of my inserts by hand. I have tried buying inserts, but I really like to add a lot of different pages and textures to my inserts, so I just prefer to create them by hand. So I use a selection of scrapbook paper and just plain journals or plain notebooks that I deconstruct, then use the pages within my inserts. So here you can see for the August one, I just made a color copy of the sun card because I really felt that had the energy for the month for me. Some sketch paper, fabric down the side, and I created a little tag and stamped out the month of August 2020. On the inside here, I've got a book page. So when I first sat down to create this particular journal, I went ahead and pulled a card. This is not, I did write August card, but it's not the same card that is from my Year Ahead spread. This card actually is more reflective of this particular insert. So I pulled a card to kind of help me tap into that energy for this particular insert as I was creating it. So for the Eight of Cups in the guidebook, she says, emotional strength is not about overcoming our feelings, but immersing and then releasing. I think I paraphrased that a little bit, but I thought that was a great card and a great energy to really remember and to keep with me throughout the month of August. So moving along, I have my first self-care Sunday spread that I did, and for this particular practice this month, I was using the Starchild Tarot and my combined Work Your Light and Starseed Oracle. So I have my reflections here. As I've mentioned before, I often use different colored ink for things that come out of the guidebook, and also kind of vary my printing a little bit. And generally what's in just plain old black, that's my own thoughts and reflections. I've mentioned that before, but that just kind of gives me a visual reference when I glance at this. This is all from the book, the Starchild guidebook, and then this would be my own reflections. So that just kind of helps me create a visual reference for myself. So then I did a reading with a couple of different decks. I was using the Mystical Healing Oracle. That was a new oracle that I'd gotten in and I wanted to do some work with it. And of course the Touchstone Tarot as well was a new deck that I'd gotten in and wanted to do some work with. And I just kind of paired it with my Tildwick and my Majestic Earth Tarot. And I had a really wonderful reading with that. And so here was the first reading that I did with the Tarot de St. Croix. And I paired that, as I mentioned in my reflections, with the Empathetic Oracle. And this is, again, just a little piece of scrapbook paper that's thrown in there, and I've made use of both sides. And because I can't obviously write on this, it's pretty and it makes a great background, but I couldn't really write on it. So I just cut a little piece of notebook paper to fit and pasted it on there and did my little reflections there. And then again, this is another book page, and here we have my next, so we're moving into the next week, and we have my reading. And you can see here, I was starting to run out of ink in my printer, and so my copies weren't coming out really great. I could have reprinted, but I didn't really want to waste the ink, and it's fine. I can still see the cards, and that's the main idea. So again, this is dot grid paper. Didn't really match the other side, so I put some book page over the top of it, and then just added my reading over the top of that, the date, and some washi. And then my reflections are actually on this side, which is vice versa of how I normally do. But really, I let the page kind of depict how the layout goes. So you can see here, I've just written around this snake here. So that was a fun one. And then we have my reading for the week. So again, we're using the Tarot de St. Croix and the Empathetic Oracle. And you can see the color here is really not great. Again, was running out of ink, hadn't replaced it at that point. So I just work with it. I go with it. I can see the card. That's the main thing. And then my own personal reflections and just some scrapbook paper behind it. They're not always like super detailed. This page, there's some extra scrapbook paper and the sticker wraps around. I had intentions of doing something with this page and then didn't, and that's totally fine. So here is another reading that I did using the Mystical Healing cards, the Touchstone, and the Majestic Earth. And I just did, just some fun scrapbooking here, some stickers. This is cloth that I've stamped over the top of, added some text stamp to it, and then of course the stamp for the date. And then I have, this was the information from the guidebook on this particular card that I pulled, and then my own personal reflections here. And I kind of ran out of room, so I just stamped the year down here, and I think that totally works. And then here is just a single card pull that I did. I didn't even write the date on it. This is one of those times where I just need to pull a card and need a message for that moment. I don't need to really journal about it. These are more what I call my mindful moment readings, where I don't actually journal about them. I just pull the card and I sit with the message, and as I kind of scrapbook onto the page, I really think about what that message means for me in that moment. And I love that it ended up kind of matching this. That's the other side of, no, that's a different book page. I'm trying to remember what I put in here. So here we have another book page. And again, I left this one, and I left this side of this one just because. And then over here I have kind of a check-in spread that I did, and this time I used the Goddess Tarot, but I did some basic collaging. Again, you can see here, these cards are all cut out, so I cut out all the cards and I just round the corners with my little corner rounder. I was having trouble seeing the cards because my printing wasn't really that great, because again, still running out of ink at this point. So I just put some basic paper that I inked up with some distressed ink behind it, just to give it some contrast, so that the cards weren't just all blending in with the text on the page. And then here's my check-in spread on the other side that I did. And then here I actually, because I skipped a whole week, so here's where my journal gets a little bit kind of funny. So we were out of town for, a good week, and I knew I wasn't going to need all of the rest of these pages in my journal to finish up the last 2 weeks of the month. So what I did is I actually glued a couple of the excess papers together. That just kind of keeps me from having a bunch of blank pages in my book, but I knew I didn't need them because I didn't have there weren't that many days left in August at this point, because like I said, I skipped a whole week because I was working in a different journal. And so here's another kind of interesting spread that I did. This, of course, too, is also scrapbook paper, 2 different pieces of scrapbook paper that I've glued together to create this layered effect. This was another single card pull that I did. Again, just made a color copy, and I did my little reflections there. And then I pulled a second one. This one is from the Touchstone Tarot. This is from Tarot de St. Croix, of course. And this one is from the Touchstone Tarot. And I actually trimmed all the borders off because I was just kind of curious what it would look like, just down to the beautiful artwork. And I kind of like it. Anyway, I did my reflections over here. And so again, because I had glued the papers together on this side, I did the same thing on the other side where I glued those 3 sheets together. And it also kind of, thickens it up a little bit. And then here is my Self-Care Sunday spread. And again, you can see I'm still working with the Star Child Tarot, and this one was from, I think, the Work Your Light. And just pulled my cards, did my reflections. This was another just 1 card pull that I did from the Mystical Healing. Sometime, I think it was Sunday evening, I did that one. Just needed to connect with it, just needed a little bit of a message for the evening. And then I have this beautiful book page, which I just left because I thought it looked really pretty and it matched really well. Here's the other side of the book page. I did end up putting my oracle card over here just because I kind of was starting to run out of space on the page. What I did for this one, I was kind of playing before I added my cards in, so I kind of added a little too much and then didn't have room for the cards. That happens sometimes, and you can see I just work around it. So I put a sticker on this side over here, and I put one down here, and I added some washi. And then I went to make color copies of my cards. Now, had I shrunk them down a little bit smaller, I could have got all 3 of them on in this particular area. But I didn't quite make them small enough. And again, I didn't want to waste the ink and paper to reprint. So I just cut them out and I just put the oracle card over here. I think it totally works. I know that's what I did, so it works for me. And then we have a lot that I pulled from the books for this particular one, and then just a little note for myself for that reading for the week. And then here we have another little quick reading that I did, and this is, I just called it my inside and out reading. And I was finding that using the Touchstone Tarot and the Majestic Earth is kind of like, the Touchstone Tarot is kind of like what's going on within me, and then the Majestic Earth of what's going on outside of me. And that was really a fun reading, and I really like those two paired together. And on this particular page, I've covered this up because this is actually quite personal stuff I have here of what's working for me and what's not. And this actually ties back into this reading that I did here, where this card was asking me to, it says, it is time to identify what is working in your life and what is harming you. And so even though this was a totally different day, I was still thinking about this card. I went back through my journal. I usually flip through my readings like for the week throughout the week, so I can touch base with the readings that I have. That's kind of one of the reasons why I keep a journal, so that I can go back and touch base with the readings that I've done throughout the week. And so I can see how those are playing themselves out, or things that I'm still needing to think of, or things that I'm still needing to work through. And so even though we're on a totally different day here, this was kind of my reflections for this initial card pull. And so I basically made a list of what is working for me and what is not working for me. And of course, I've just covered this up with a piece of scrap paper, because that's pretty personal stuff. So again, not everything has to be in order. Sometimes I jump around, and that's okay too, because this is my personal journal, so I know what I did there. I know that that reading actually reflects back to the card before. In 5 years, will I still remember that? I don't know, maybe. But it's important for right now, because this for right now is what is working for me and what's not. And so I have that I can go back to. And so this was just a collage, kind of fun collage project that I did. Sometimes I do these when I just need to take a break, right, from whatever is going on. Or I'm feeling a little discombobulated. I almost always pull from the Llewellyn Tarot. That's like my comfort deck. And I pulled a card from it, and then I just do collage. As you can see, it's not journaling. It's just paper collaging, because for me, collaging is very therapeutic. Ripping paper and inking paper and cutting things up is very therapeutic for me. It's very cathartic. And so a lot of times I do just these kind of one card spread collage art things in my journal, just to kind of give me a moment of pause, a message to reflect on. Again, I just make a full color copy of the card and then use it to build around. And so that's a fun one. I like to do that in my journals. And here we have my last Self-Care Sunday reading for the month. And again, you can see that I just did some basic stickers with this one. I didn't do a ton. I didn't have a ton of type, and that's okay. So nothing too fancy there, but I don't always have time for fancy. This was a card pull that I did just because at one point. I don't even remember at this point really why I pulled it, but that's the card, the message that I needed in that moment. And I just added a big sticker behind it and called it good. So here's the other side of that scrapbook paper there. You can see I didn't really do anything with it. And then the final entry into my journal is my monthly reflections. And this comes from, I have a little card here that I put my journaling prompts on, so that I can remember to journal about those at the end of every month. And so it's on the back of one of the extra Llewellyn cards, which that's just fitting for me. So every month I try to connect with the end of the month. I try to reflect on, how did I honor my practice? What were my challenges? And what brought me joy? And that is the end of my journal. You can see I have a blank page there, rest of the book page, and then here's the back of that. So that's a look at my tarot journal for August. So real quick, I just thought I'd share with you what my journal looks like when I'm out of town. And there's actually a pen in here still. So this is just a plain, like, lined notebook. It's the cheapy brand from Walmart. And what I do in here is, it's my catch-all for when I'm out of town. So any notes that I have from books that I'm reading, readings that I have done. So I pulled a couple cards here. These are notes from, I was reading The Dark Goddess, and you can see here that I do some doodling and just, this is what my general journals, my general notebooks look like. They're not all, you know, art journals like this. Most of my notebooks look like this. This was a Hecate reading that I did. Again, this was some notes. There's another reading that I did while out of town. Another reading. So you can see here that, more readings. I just kind of write whatever. And then this is something totally different. This is me working out some plans for a tarot deck, actually. It's not necessarily my out of town journal. I did buy a new one for when we went out of town because my other one was full, but this is just where I put everything that I am thinking of doing. This is kind of like my starting point. Whoops, knocking things around. This is kind of my starting point, and then it moves from there. Obviously, if I'm at home and I'm doing a tarot reading, then it goes in here. But if I'm out of town and anything that I'm doing just gets dumped into this one place, this also still sits on my desk. So it does get added to as I'm working through things. Like all of this here, my sketches for, you know, some thoughts on a deck that I want to create, this is all stuff that I've added being at home. This is also what my journals look like. So I just thought I'd share that with you because you can see here that, you know, I have some readings in the beginning too. And these ones didn't make it into my journal because they didn't really feel that they needed to. They were kind of just readings for when we were out of town and just ways for me to kind of connect with my cards while we were gone. So that is a look at my tarot journal for August, as well as my travel / catch-all journal where everything goes. Thank you for joining me for this flip through my tarot journal pages. If you'd like to find out more about any of the decks that I used this last month, check out my monthly reflections video, which you will find linked in the description box below. I hope you enjoyed this flip through and will join me again soon for more creative tarot for an inspired life.